a step back real quick. Let the people know exactly what we're talking about. The NCAA just came out with a whole new scholarship and
Mhm.
roster cap guideline for 2025, I believe it is, correct?
Yeah,
And
25, 26. Yep.
and specifically just because my son wrestles for UNC, you're heavily involved, but this goes down the board, and we have a list.
Mhm.
Like women's tumbling had 14 scholarships, right?
Yeah.
Their new limit is 55 scholarships now. That's an increase of 41 scholarships. To me, that's crazy insane. Baseball, they had 11.7, now 34. That's more than
34.
double. It's crazy. But even football had 85 scholarships, and they're jumping up to 105. You said something interesting, which I didn't know. This is why we wanted to talk to you, is that you don't have to opt into this. This is a revenue sharing. Universities have the ability not to do this.
Yeah. So it,
I
it
didn't.
always it all comes down to funding, right? So like if you're a non-power four, I won't even call it power five anymore. If
Yeah.
you're a non-power four school, you're not going to want to opt into revenue share because the money you make, it props up the rest of your administration. You're not
Yeah.
going to be able to spend money on your athletes as well as your administration. You'll be down to one athletic director and his or her assistant, right? Like you won't have anybody in your administration. So there's going to be schools that just can't afford to do it because like I said, it's going to come down to, how much money they can truly spend. But your Penn States, your Alabamas, your Georgia, Florida State, those schools are going to be like, yeah, we're in on the rev share. We want our players to be paid. We
Yeah.
want to make sure that we have more scholarships, but you don't have to fill that 105. Like baseball
Okay.
34, you don't have to fill that 34. You can still save the third. You can save a little bit and say, I'm not going to give all 34 and save it for walk-ons that can then eventually earn a spot onto the team.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and then wrestling specifically, they go up to 30. They had 9.9 in men's wrestling and 10 in women's wrestling. Both of those are going up to 30 because what you do on the men's side, you have to do on the women's side because of Title IX. So with that 30, there are certain schools that have way more than 30. I mean, Oregon State has 42 on their
Yeah.
roster.
I talked to
So
Sonny. Sonny said he has 43 guys, and I
yeah,
told him, like, well, yeah, I hope you make the team next year because now there's 30.
yeah,
Now,
and that's the thing. He goes to a school that's most likely going to opt into the rev share because they have big sports, basketball, football, or big time sports for
yeah,
UNC. So they're probably going to opt in, which means that those schools that opt in, they're going to have to make cuts to
it's a
their team.
hard cap 30
Hard cap
guys
of
per group.
30. Because
Now,
now they're getting paid, so they need to know how much. It's going to be run like any other business, right? Like we know what the salaries are for every single person in our business if we're running a business. So that's how things are going to change if they opt into it. If they don't opt into it, if the school doesn't opt in, and you can't just opt in certain sports. From my understanding, that can be, don't quote me on that, but from my understanding, it's either
you
your
opted in.
entire school opts in or not. So you might have to have some cuts and you might have to, take some people off the team if you're one of those schools that are opting in. And that's how things are going to change. So donor money is going to be even bigger than what it was with these NIL collectives because now you're going to be a little bit more worried about the money that is coming out of the administration
Yeah.
because of where it's going to go. It has to go somewhere. So if somebody is coming in as a wrestling donor, then they're going to say, all right, I want this specifically to go to wrestling, or I want this specifically to go to gymnastics.
Uh-huh.
That's going to help to keep those sports in those schools. But if funding gets out of hand, the Olympic sports, they're on the chopping block because they're
Oh,
not bringing money in, they're taking money out. So Olympic sports are usually the ones that they're going to get rid of in that regard. I mean, you remember a couple of years ago when Stanford was going to be getting rid of wrestling and a couple other sports. And they were like, well, how are you getting rid of wrestling and these other sports where these sports are endowed right now? Like there's
the biggest endowment
millions of dollars.
it's like billions, right?
Yeah, like crazy endowments. So that's why that didn't really work out. And the pushback and stuff. And they were like, oh, we found, some money in our couch, which it's the dumbest excuse ever. The sports are endowed. But like, Yeah, I mean these roster caps, they're going to change a lot of things for the schools that end up opting in.
Now, I saw that, one of my favorite wrestlers and Sonny's favorite wrestlers is Yanni, and Yanni D immediately came out against it. Does it affect the Ivies different? Because
I think it will. The Ivies are kind of under like a whole different cap anyway. Remember, like when COVID happened, the Ivies, they weren't
yeah,
they
this
didn't wrestle that one year,
yeah,
right? Like it was completely different. And now also the Ivies are going to have their own like separate conference tournament. So like normally the Ivies in wrestling are in the
yeah,
EIWA. All those Ivy League schools are no longer going to be part of the EIWA. They're going to be part of just their own Ivy League championship. So that's going to be different as well in the next year. But yeah, I think the Ivies, it'll definitely be different for them. And they're part of those schools also that even if even if it was like a blanket ruling where you could opt in, I highly doubt that the Ivies are opting into anything.
yeah. I I just just yesterday I saw like a clip of at, I think it was the University of Michigan where the campus police came in a meeting and called out this one kid, said, we're had to take you in for this your conduct, and they gave him he was a walk-on. Like, we're not
Mhm.
going to get any of those awesome videos anymore of the walk-ons, getting full rides. Man, where is, and I know this is just a crazy question to ask you, but I feel like the NCAA is going to it's just going to implode. I mean, it's gotten so out of hand that people don't know where college athletics and amateur athletics are headed.
They're
I know
the
it's impossible.
division. Yeah, but I feel like the Division 1 level is becoming professionalized because
Uh,
I mean it kind of has to, right? Like they're the money makers. They're the ones that we're going for the most part. They're the 99% we're going to see in the professional ranks at some point. So they're going to start to professionalize them in some sort of way. And I think it's going to happen with women's basketball, it's going to happen with men's basketball. We're going to see it with football, obviously. So those will be like the big sports that it truly happens to, where they're going to start to really professionalize them. Because with NIL, these players making, millions of dollars while they're still in college, all these things are going to be changing. So, I mean, hell, in football this year, football players, they're the quarterback and then one defensive player is going to have the green dot on their helmet this year. So there's certain teams are going
yeah.
to be using Apple and certain teams are going to be using Microsoft in their helmets so that the coach can call plays in. So
Wow.
professionalizing college sports is just it's going to happen. And I mean, I think it's the right way to go because you're seeing the talent and you're seeing all these things shift and change. But the other Division 2 and even like other like FCS teams, it's going to be hard for them to keep up, right? It's just going to be different. And Division 1 is going to do what they do, and they're ahead of the curve. So things are going to change, but I don't think it changes the on-field product because a lot of these things don't come down to on-field rules at all. They
I don't
come
know,
down
man.
to marketing.
What could go wrong when we have Microsoft giving the plays? I mean, we could
Who
have
knows?
we
Crowd
could
strike.
yeah, we could have a crash, a web crash, and imagine that. That'd be crazy. But a lot of people don't know this, Ryan. When people talk about, oh, my kid got a scholarship to play tennis or even to play baseball, if you go down this list, it's kind of just shocking to see the limitations that they had. I
Mhm.
mean, people don't understand that there's 43 wrestlers on a team and there's only 9.9 scholarships per year to go around. A lot of those kids, and Tony Ramos, he's the first to tell you that he went to Iowa on a 3% scholarship. They gave him
Yep.
a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a book, and
That was it.
and
He
so
was an NCAA champion and a
yeah,
starter for a number of years.
yeah. So, when people say, "Oh yeah, I got a scholarship," I mean, this is just a game changer. I'm so glad that we had you on to talk about this, man, because I'm still don't know where this is headed, but people need to know that this is a big, big deal. And I mean, it's already, how it is because you follow high school and wrestling. it is a grind. It's $1 billion business, youth sports, to try to get kids scholarships. And why I thought it was a positive, because there's more available. But if it cuts programs, and especially Olympic, which that they would be the first to go, I believe you when you say that, that's also a bad. So there's good and bad to this.
Yeah, because like I said, it comes down to funding, and if they can't fund the coaching staffs, because even within this, all this came out of the case that we talked about the last time I was on, the House versus NCAA case. All of the roster caps and stuff, they're all part of this, and none of these things are finalized yet. They still have to agree on all the terms. So even between the last time I was on and this time, they haven't even agreed to all of the different terms. They're still ironing things out.
Yeah.
I believe Friday is where they're probably going to have everything completely ironed out, and we'll be looking to gain approval from all sides so that it can take hold in 2025, 2026. But like I said, it comes down to funding. And if they're trying to fund, more than 85 scholarships on football, and then also in football, they now have unlimited coaching staffs in football as well. So the coaching staffs are going to get bigger. So they're going to need funding for that as well. So if they need funding for all these analyst jobs, because that's another thing, is within these unlimited coaching staffs, you can now be an analyst and coach the kids. So before, if you had a title of an analyst, you weren't allowed to coach. You were just allowed to be an analyst, to be in meetings and to discuss things with the head coach, but you weren't an on-field coach. Now you're going to have a QB1 analyst that literally just works with QB1, right? Like I'm being crazy about it, but like you're going to have more analysts that are now on the field. Shit like this is going to happen now. There's going to be a lot more money that's being spent. And I know I'm harping on football, but like that's where this case came from. And that's what most people are going to think about, even though the person that brought the case, the person that's name is House in this, was a swimmer. It really was focusing on these Power 5 at the time, now Power 4 conferences that had enough money to collectively bargain against the players, that kept them amateur with the ESPNs and the ABCs and the NBCs. And there's just, it's a web that's just continually being pulled apart.
Yeah,
so
it's
it'll be crazy though.
Crazy.